The wind howled across the Wyoming plains like a beast mourning its dead. Snow fell in thick, blinding sheets, covering the tracks of horses long gone and muffling the cries of the woman they left behind. Her name was Clara Mayfield, 24 years old, born on the frontier, raised tough, but even the toughest didn't survive long when left bleeding in a snowstorm. Her breath came in short gasps, her lips already tinged blue, and her fingers trembling as she tried to pull the torn edges of her dress over the gaping wound in her side. Blood soaked the white snow, a crimson blossom against winter's canvas. They thought she'd die here. They meant for her to. The ambush came without warning. She'd ridden with her husband, Everett Mayfield, and his gang of bounty hunters for over a year, tracking outlaws, delivering justice or something close to it. Clara wasn't just Everett's wife. She was his partner, his equal, but Everett had never seen her that way. To him, she was a tool, and when she started asking questions about the gold shipment that had gone missing from Fort Bridger, a shipment only Everett's gang knew about, he decided she'd seen too much. It was Jeremiah Pike who pulled the trigger. Clara remembered the flash, the roar, the burning heat in her side. She fell from her horse as they laughed and rode off. No one looked back. Everett had whispered, "Snow'll finish what we started." And they left her, crumpled and broken in a blizzard that didn't forgive. But Clara didn't die. Somewhere between the blinding pain and the darkness, creeping at the edge of her vision, she heard the sound of hooves, not the thundering gallop of Everett's men, but softer, slower, deliberate. A figure loomed above her, a shadow wrapped in furs, with black braids whipping in the storm and eyes like burning coal. She passed out before she heard him speak. When Clara woke, it was in a warm lodge, the air heavy with the scent of sage and firewood. Her side ached fiercely, wrapped tight in deerskin bandages. Around her sat 3 Comanche women, one gently spooning a broth to her lips. The man who found her, his name was Tahan, stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes wary. He didn't ask questions, not yet. Clara healed slowly. The Comanche camp was nestled deep in the red cliffs, sheltered from the worst of the weather, and hidden from soldiers and settlers alike. These people had reasons not to trust white faces, but Tahan saw something in Clara, something fierce, something that refused to die. Weeks passed. She learned to walk again, then to ride. Tahan taught her to move like a shadow, to track prey without sound, to aim with deadly precision. But more than that, he listened, really listened when she told him what had happened, about Everett, about the betrayal, about the gold. Tahan didn't flinch. He simply said, "We help our own, now you're ours." But trust had to be earned. Clara trained until her hands bled. She faced trials set by the Comanche elders. She hunted and brought back food. She stood guard in the cold nights, staring into the dark as if daring Everett to come find her. One morning a scout brought word. Everett's gang was holed up at the old mining outpost near Bitter Ridge, flashing gold and boasting about the woman they'd killed. Clara's rage was silent, but it burned hotter than any fire. She looked to Tahan and said, "Ride with me." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and spoke to the warriors gathered around the council fire. 70 rows, 70 warriors, men and women, young and old, faces painted with war colors, voices raised in fierce cries that echoed across the cliffs. Clara rode at the front, her coat lined with wolf fur, her braid tied with red cloth. Her heart beat like a war drum. They moved like smoke, fast, silent, deadly. When they reached Bitter Ridge, the sky was just beginning to burn with dawn. Everett and his men never saw it coming. Arrows flew before the first gunshot rang. Clara rode straight through the center of camp, a rifle in each hand, fire in her eyes. Jeremiah Pike fell first, one shot to the chest, and she didn't stop to watch him fall. She found Everett trying to scramble onto his horse. She shot the beast first, then dismounted slowly. Everett looked up at her, disbelief frozen on his face. "Clara, you left me for dead," she said calmly, raising her gun. "Wait." She shot him in the leg. He screamed. "Gold, where is it?" He spat blood and curses, but she didn't flinch. She let Tahan walk up behind her. He held a knife carved from obsidian. Together they made Everett talk. The gold was hidden in the caves just north of camp. It was all there, crates of it. Enough to rebuild the village 3 times over. Enough to buy medicine, tools, and trade with allies. Clara didn't take a coin. She rode away from Bitter Ridge with her Comanche family, leaving the bodies behind and the snow stained with vengeance. Snow still covered the red cliffs when Clara stood once again before the council fire, but this time, not as a wounded outsider. She stood tall in full warrior regalia, her coat stitched with wolf fur, her face painted in the sacred Comanche pattern of vengeance and honor. The elders, lined with years of battles and loss, gave her a nod that said more than words ever could. She had proven herself, not by bloodline, but by fire. Still, one ember of rage burned. Everett Mayfield was dead, but he wasn't the root, he was a branch. The root went deeper, far beneath the soil of greed and betrayal, and Clara had found it. She held the letters in her hand, documents retrieved from Everett's saddlebag during that cold morning at Bitter Ridge. One name repeated like a poison: Silas Hartley, a cattle baron from Amarillo, a man who supplied weapons, bribed military officials, and orchestrated the theft of government gold from Fort Bridger. Everett had merely been the knife. Hartley had wielded it. Clara spread the papers before the council. "This man," she said, voice firm and measured, "funded the raid that left me for dead. He profits off stolen treaties, fuels wars, and uses men like Everett to silence anyone who knows too much. That gold, your gold, was just the beginning." The fire cracked. Silence followed. Then Tahan stepped forward. His eyes burned with understanding. "Then he will answer." What happened next wasn't a call to war. It was a gathering of justice. Scouts were sent north and west. Allies were summoned. By the time Clara rode again, she was not followed by 70 Comanche warriors. She led over 200, Comanche, Apache, Cheyenne, even a few white settlers who had lost family to Hartley's schemes. It wasn't an army. It was a reckoning. Their plan was swift and strategic. They started by cutting off Hartley's influence. His rail lines were sabotaged. His supply routes raided, not for gold, but for evidence. Clara made sure every message, every logbook, every bribe was documented. They spread word across frontier towns to soldiers and marshals who still had a shred of honor left. The tide was changing, and Clara was at its front. Hartley responded with fire. His hired guns torched Comanche camps. They ambushed patrols. Clara lost people she had trained with, bled with, broken bread with. At night, the firelight didn't comfort her anymore. It reminded her of the burning farms, of weeping mothers, of the snow she was left in once. But she didn't waver. Each loss became a reason to fight harder. Then came the night of the storm. The moon was swallowed by clouds when Clara's scouts reported movement near the foothills. A large convoy of Hartley's men, escorting a final shipment of arms meant to crush the uprising once and for all. Clara didn't wait. She mounted her horse, her rifle strapped to her back, and raised her hand. We meet them in the gorge tonight." The battle at Hollowback Gorge became legend. Hartley's men had cannons, Gatling guns. They expected a direct charge. They didn't get one. Clara's forces attacked from the cliffs, from the trees, from beneath the snow. Silent arrows flew before gunpowder ever flashed. Guerrilla tactics, taught by generations of warriors who knew the land better than any map, turned the gorge into a grave. At the center, Clara rode like a ghost of vengeance. Her eyes found Silas Hartley on the ridge, shouting orders, shielded by men and steel. But no shield stopped her now. She dismounted, flanked by Tahan and a dozen riders, and stormed the ridge. Gunfire blazed. Clara dropped 2 men before they ever raised their rifles. Tahan took a bullet to the shoulder, but didn't fall. And when they reached Hartley, he was trembling, not with cold, but with fear. "You," he spat. "You're just some dead man's whore dressed in paint." Clara leveled her revolver at his face. "No, I'm the fire you lit and thought would die." "You're a savage now?" She pressed the barrel harder. "I'm justice, and I speak for the blood you spilled." Hartley laughed, a cruel, cracked sound. "Kill me and you'll only prove them right." She pulled back the hammer, but didn't fire. Instead, she stepped back. "You're not worth the bullet, but the world will see what you are." Clara didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted exposure. Hartley was taken alive, dragged back to the settlements, bound and paraded before judges, tribal leaders, and journalists. The documents she had recovered from his convoys, signed bribes, stolen army orders, false land deeds, were read aloud at trial. There was no escape, no lie left to hide behind. He was sentenced to hang, but Clara wasn't there to see it. She had other paths to walk. Weeks later, as spring broke across the plains, Clara stood on a hill overlooking the red cliffs. Below her, children ran through wildflowers, mothers ground corn by firelight, and men mended saddles and hunted game, not for war, but for life. Tahan stood beside her, shoulders still bandaged. "You leaving?" he asked. Clara nodded. "I was born on the frontier, but I died in that snow. What came back doesn't belong to one place. You'll always belong here." She smiled softly. "I know. That's why I'll carry this place wherever I go." She mounted her horse, her rifle slung over her shoulder, braid tied with red cloth. "Clara," Tahan said as she turned to go, "what will you tell them out there when they ask who you are?" She paused. "I'll tell them I was left for dead in the snow, and I came back with 70 Comanche warriors." Then she rode, and the legend followed.